Legends, and welcome to Blunt Force Healing Podcast, episode 304. And it's a video update number 82, I believe. Let me just start and test new thing. So, to summarize quickly, for those of you that are new to the podcast and blog, this thing happens every day. So, I chose the journaling format to write the blog post every day and then record the podcast episode. After some time, I decided to swap those two tasks, and like today and now, I record the podcast episode first and then will write the blog post. Recently, I've hit the 300 days milestone, which is nice and quite uplifting in terms of comparison to my other efforts in the past that used to last maybe for 30-40 days, and this one lasts so long, which is 300 days is not that far from the whole year of blogging and podcasting every day, which is so cool. And to be honest, going back in time, I was sure that it will be a tough challenge, and I didn't go that far in thinking that it might be actually happening and that I will reach that particular milestone. But here we are, it's 304 blog posts and podcast episodes. So I made it. And I keep going. There's no plans to stop that. Currently, I'm testing some changes to the blog because outside of the daily updates in terms of my progress of what I do, how my satellite habits go, and what else really happens in my life. Obviously, I want to deliver as much value to the readers, watchers, or listeners as possible in different disciplines or areas of life that I might have something valuable to say. And today is quite late, but I wanted to test a little change and see how it will go. So, what's in my head is a slight productivity hack. What I mean is, every single day I need to secure some time to record this podcast, and it ranges from, I would say, 5-10 minutes up to almost 30 minutes of recording. Then you need to account for uploading it to Spotify and YouTube. Fortunately, I already piggyback on Spotify because as a host to my podcast, Spotify is making sure to create the audio and video versions separately, so they are available in audio for Spotify users that only listen, and then in video format for those that like to watch it. But also, other podcasts are interconnected with my host Spotify. So this audio episode is pushed towards likes of Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, I think Stitcher or Overcast and other platforms. So that's one way to leverage the single piece of content for in a more productive way. But then after recording the podcast, I need to write the blog post. And usually, blog post is a fairly short, couple of paragraphs summary of the same thing that goes into the podcast episode, but in a written form, slightly different, so it supplements the actual blog post. And the separate challenge to writing is obviously time. To write even a shorter, kind of one pager post, and to make sure that all the metadata is set properly, like tags, categories, and I usually put at least 2 pictures into the blog post, as well as embed the YouTube and Spotify episode. So there is a little bit of admin work after writing the blog post, and then I need to publish it and repost on Twitter and Facebook. Facebook goes automatically. Twitter unfortunately got detached or disconnected from WordPress, so I need to do manual copy paste and put that on Twitter. What sometimes is challenging is the writing itself. It takes time. And both usually overlap, the blog post and the podcast episode. So what I do now actually is I turned my iPhone into dictation mode, and at the moment it is listening and catching everything I say in this podcast episode. And as I see it, it writes it into a note. Obviously, I won't use it as a whole, that text, but I wanted to test and see how much of it will be helpful to create a skeleton or a baseline for the blog post, and thus make it more productive for me. And I saw many podcasters and bloggers that do different types of content. They very often create the blog posts that are exact written versions or almost exact written versions with YouTube or audio version of the podcast embedded, which is pretty much what I do, but with exclusion of that blog post that is usually slightly less text and a bit different than the episode. So I'll see how it goes. I'll just copy that note and paste it into WordPress and see how much of that text I want to use. It might end up that I will use all of it with slight modifications, or that I won't use anything at all. We'll see. But this is a test, and I already created the frame or skeleton of the I would say meta information of today's blog post, and I titled it initially as a triple milestone. Triple milestone because in my satellite habits, as I call them, I've hit fairly relevant milestones, and I'll just take my phone and will tell you exactly what the milestones are. So in Duolingo language learning, mostly Spanish, I currently hit 775 days streak. This is the only habit that predates this project, which I call core habits, the blogging and the podcasting. Then I have Duolingo math, which is it's very similar to Duolingo, but it's not about language learning, but more about maths problems and equations, assessment, estimation, things like that. And I'm currently on 127-day streak. There is another big milestone that happened today, which was in the Mimo app. And that app is very similar to Duolingo, but it is about learning programming and coding. And I currently hit 190 days streak. And there are two smaller habits, and one of them is that third milestone. So we have 775 and 190, and Elevate and Peak apps are the applications that do brain training. So they are simply games that stimulate our thinking in different ways, in different disciplines. So while they are fun and maybe not scientifically super proven to be making geniuses out of people, they certainly keep people sharp and their brains working in different, areas, being fresh and kind of useful. And in Elevate, I just hit 30-day streak, which is the third milestone that I mentioned. And on Peak side, I just hit 5 days because I barely started. This is my fifth satellite milestone that I started. And if you go to the blog, which the address is in the description of any podcast episode, you will see at the end of the blog post, I always do the summary in visuals where I am on the satellite habits journey. And today's update is quite simple because it was mainly focused at work. Julian had some soccer training informal training. He met with a couple of friends and they played together. But I spent most of the day in the house, and only about half an hour ago, or maybe an hour ago, we went with my wife for a short walk just to kind of get some fresh air before sleep. So nothing really to update about today. Tomorrow doesn't seem to be any way different, but I'll try to get some specific topic to talk about and write about a little bit more to, make it more entertaining and valuable for you guys, as well as maybe I can carve out some time to jump on a bike and do some interesting cycle, preferably somewhere around mountains, specifically BlueStack mountains. We'll see what can we do. But at the moment, I think that's it for now. I won't be dragging for too long. There's no point in that. We are closing on 14 minutes. So thank you very much for coming. As always, I appreciate your time popping by and listening to my ramblings. And this is Blunt Force Healing Journal, episode 304. I'm signing off. Have a great rest of the day, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. And stay tuned for tomorrow. See ya.